Uhuru. Uhuru, everyone. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We just want to welcome everybody, give you all a round of applause. Thanks for being here. So we're really excited to be hosting this event tonight. The climate crisis is a struggle against colonialism with one of our first hybrid events. So we actually have an audience here in the Uhuru Solidarity Center here in St. Louis. Uhuru. And we're also on Zoom and on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you're watching from any of those platforms on social media, please share this video and like this video, comment on this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, do everything you can to get more people tuned in to this incredibly critical and urgent discussion that we're going to be having tonight, hosted by Uhuru Solidarity Movement and the African People's Solidarity Committee. And we are having this event because the question of the climate crisis is on a lot of people's minds, understandably, something many people, millions of people are very concerned about. And this event, through the lens and understanding of the African working class, African internationalism, will dig into the root cause of the climate crisis and what we can do about it. So I'm very honored to be emceeing this event tonight. My name is Jesse Neville, and I have the honor to be the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the organization of white people working under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, working for reparations to African people. And I'm very honored and excited that we will be joined by the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, Penny Hess, who will be giving the main presentation at our event tonight. Uhuru. So before we get started, as I said, if you're tuning in on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to get alerts whenever we go live or post a new video. This is analysis that you can only get right here from the Uhuru movement, understanding the world through the eyes of the African working class, which is the only way to really understand reality, to see things as they really are. And again, if you're tuning in on Facebook, share this live stream. Let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. We are going to have question and answer later in the program, so take notes. And that includes obviously people in the room here, and enter your questions in the comments on YouTube or Facebook. And again, the work of USM is to raise reparations from the white community to fund the incredible work of the African People's Socialist Party, including the amazing Black Power Blueprint here in North St. Louis. And part of the Black Power Blueprint is this very building that we are in right now, the Uhuru Solidarity Center here at 2654 Gravois in South St. Louis. This building is owned by the African People's Socialist Party, and we have been given use of this beautiful building as a solidarity center with the sign "Unity Through Reparations" to the African community. We will be holding a grand opening event for the center on Saturday, May 21st from 2 to 4. We want everyone to come out to that. So if you're local, mark your calendars. Even if you're not, see if you can travel in for this really historic event. The first time in St. Louis there has ever been an organizing base for white reparations to African people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So this is momentous, and we're going to celebrate and kick it off. So we invite everyone to come out to that. And we will be raising funds for this Solidarity Center tonight. Our goal is to raise $500. We're going to talk more about that later. You can go to uhurusolidarity.org/donate to contribute throughout the program. And we want to salute our leadership. We want to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the founder, leader, and chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, who leads the African Revolution around the world and who developed the political theory of African internationalism that allows us to understand the climate crisis in a truly scientific way, looking at all the factors that have created it and the only real way that it can be solved. We also salute Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela, who has put Chairman Omali Yeshitela's political theory into practice on the ground in St. Louis and worldwide, not only with the Black Power Blueprint here in St. Louis, but with over 50 economic self-determination institutions of the Uhuru movement that Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela presides over. And I want to, again, salute and say what an honor it is to introduce the main presenter of this event tonight, Penny Hess, who is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the cadre organization of white people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party that was founded in 1976 at a founding conference in Florida where Chairwoman Penny Hess was present. And for the last, now that would be 46 years, Chairwoman Penny Hess has been on the front lines, in the trenches, under the leadership of the party and Chairman Amalia Shatella, building and leading the movement for white reparations to African people and white solidarity with Black power. So to get started with this powerful discussion, I will turn it over to you, Chairwoman Penny Hess. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Let me pull up my notes here. Thank you, Comrade Jesse. And just to say, wow, that was a great overview. Really appreciate that. I'm very excited to be here. This is, as I understand it, a hybrid event. As we said, we have real people here for the first time, one of the very first times since before COVID. And I'm really happy of that. And I'm happy to be here in St. Louis in our new building, the building that's owned by the African People's Socialist Party, that we have the honor of being a front of the African Revolution behind enemy lines, so to speak, as Chairman Amalia Shatella said it. And before I get started on this question, which is extremely important, I do want to join in saluting Chairman Amalia Shatella, who is the leader of the African Revolution, who has been dedicated to the liberation of African people, meaning all Black people everywhere in the world, wherever they have been, as the chairman says, forcibly dispersed around the world through the assault on Africa and the kidnapping of African people, and on the continent of Africa. So everywhere, African people are one people, and there's a huge unity of African people, and the struggle to liberate Africa, to seize it out of the hands of the colonizers of Europe, of those who divided up Africa into, it should be one country, but in fact it's 50-something different countries created to serve the needs of various European countries and speaking European languages. So I just want to say that Chairman Amalia Shatella has worked from the 1960s until today, nonstop, not ever, ever, ever stopping, to do whatever is necessary to fight for the liberation of African people. Because believe me, the conditions today are worse than they were in the 1960s on every front, on the mass imprisonment, on poverty, on the powerlessness, on the home ownership, anything, you name it, it's less, it's worse. The number of African babies that die in childbirth, the number of African mothers that die in childbirth inside the United States, it's worse, and nobody has kept this struggle alive more than Chairman Amalia Shatella. And I'll be very excited when you'll be able to meet him and see him very soon, or he's often on YouTube, so you will be able to see that. He has a Sunday study every Sunday, there will be one this Sunday as well. And I have to say this because we are white people under the leadership of the African Revolution. That means the African working class. And some people don't like it that we say, that we acknowledge the chairman. No, this is how we learned everything we could learn, because we sit on the pedestal of the oppression of African, indigenous, and colonized peoples around the world. And, this is the framework for everything that we understand or see. And so for us to see the world as it really is, to begin to see the world, to try to see the world through the eyes of those who are, as the chairman said, have been the objects of history, who have no voice, who have no narrative, who are there simply to feed our bellies and our pocketbooks, is a really incredibly liberating thing. And it's something that to me, once it was like a door in my mind that I could step through and then begin to see a whole other reality and all of the things that we take for granted. So I just want to say that, I acknowledge that the chairman has fought more than anybody else for not only for the liberation of African people, but that means for all oppressed peoples, for the indigenous people, for the Palestinian people, for the Arab and Asian and all oppressed peoples everywhere. And all white people who want to join this struggle, who we want to be part of a future in which all human beings and the earth itself can live. So I salute the chairman. He is brilliant. He is tireless. He is still fighting today after almost 60 years of struggling. And I also join in saluting Deputy Chair Ona Zanea-Shatella, who is incredible and just absolutely is putting the ideas into practice in the sense of building the economic institutions that represent political and economic power in the hands of the African working class, which is the Black Power Blueprint. I want all of you who haven't seen it before to be able to come for a tour, come to the Saturday market, just be able to see what is going on there. We're going to talk about it a little bit more, from community center, community garden, market, community basketball court, African Women's Center, doula training program. I mean, it just goes, kitchen, cafe, there's so many other things. And that, and that's just here. I mean, there are programs and institutions of the Uhuru movement and the African People's Socialist Party in Philadelphia, Oakland, St. Petersburg, Florida, Huntsville, an organization in London, in Paris, in Johannesburg or outside of Johannesburg, South Africa, and many other places around. So I just want to say that, and to say that this question of the climate change is extremely dire. And in fact, we were at a fair sponsored by the city this Sunday. And I mean, there was no information about what the state that this planet is in. I was supposed to be talking about that. We were the only ones, that what is happening on the planet. And people were just walking around with their beer and their drink and their hot dog or whatever, and it was a fun day, and that's fine. We had a great day. We met so many wonderful people who were really wanted to talk about this, but this media, this system does not talk about the state of the planet. And so I just want to say on that again, to deal with the state of the planet, that we have to look to the leadership of indigenous and the African working class, because when they had power before Europe came and colonized them, there was no problem with the environment then, because they saw the world. They didn't believe in private property even. They didn't believe that, like Chief Seattle said, how can you own the land? He couldn't even have a concept of that. He couldn't have a concept of owning the air or water, all of which is privatized now. And so things were very different under the social systems that they lived in, and that we live in a system that is built on the colonial domination of other people, and something Chairman Omali-Shatella calls the colonial mode of production, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. So let's get started. First of all, I want to say that the earth, and I'm not going to have time to go way into everything that is happening, but the earth has not been this hot for 120,000 years. So it has not been this hot while human beings have lived on this planet. And that there has not been this much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for 800,000 years, almost 1 million years. So human beings have never lived in the conditions that we're seeing unfold on this planet right now before we speak. And what climate scientists are saying is that if the overall global temperature rises a full 2 degrees centigrade, since 1750. They always use 1750 as the advent of the Industrial Revolution, and I'll say something about that. But, you know, it seems to go, oh, well, it's only 2 degrees. But no, 2 degrees determines, you know, another degree after that, and human beings could not live on this planet. You're talking about the overall global average of temperature, and it is felt by the colonized countries, Africa, South America, you know, South Asia, etc. And that, you know, they're saying that beyond 2 degrees, the habitat for humans to even live on this planet will be destroyed. And we are at something like 1.7 degrees over that. So we only have 0.3 degrees to go. And actually, even the very conservative US-backed United Nations, which is there to uphold the will of the US, basically, put out has been putting out very serious reports for a while, but I think they issued 3 this year so far. And they are saying that if the problem isn't dealt with, and massive reduction of fossil fuels and carbon dioxide in the next 7 years, that's sort of it. So, you know, it's very, very urgent. And what we're seeing as a result, just in a brief summation, is, as you know, massive forest fires all over California, but not only there, the Arctic Circle, Sweden, and, you know, Finland, these places, Ireland, these places are having massive fires, and they had to like call California because they didn't know how to deal with them. And actually, in many places, Australia was burning, and there it was the indigenous people who were like, we know how to deal with this. And, you know, the system does not know how to deal with it. We see the melting of the ice caps, which is very, very significant because the ice on the poles is what reflects the sun away from the earth. So the more that the ice melts, the more the sun is drawn into the oceans, which is darker. So it draws the sun in. And, it's very serious. So we see the melting of the ice caps, we see the sea level rise, which is going to be taken on exponentially as the ice caps continue to melt. We see droughts that haven't been seen since biblical times, but yet at the same time, we see floods so strong that they're called atmospheric rivers. Especially in California, we see massive hurricanes that they've almost never seen before, the power of, that are very slow and they don't just pass through, they stay over a certain long time and do a lot of damage, especially in Southeast Asia and the Philippines and Sri Lanka and India. And we see, you know, the spread of diseases as we see. We see the warming of the ocean, the destruction of the rainforest and the coral reefs, which are called the lungs of the planet. And I think, I don't have the number right in front of me, but the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, is being destroyed at something like 150 million acres a year. I mean, it's just massive. And, you know, we see 200 species of animals going extinct a day, and much more, and much more. We see temperatures rising to 120 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity. And there's a heat wave right now, if you haven't read about it, going on in India and Pakistan, where the temperature is like 113 degrees. And next week they're saying it's going to be 120 degrees. And that's over the entire region, not just a section of that, in a place where people do not have air conditioning and all of that. So this is some of the conditions that exist on this planet right now. And this has a cause, and the cause is colonialism. Colonialism and climate change are one and the same. And it's very, it's kind of outrageous when you have a white-led environmental movement that can maybe some people glimpse the seriousness of this crisis, but it never mentions this, that this same system, this colonial mode of production, perpetrated genocide, massive genocide against indigenous people. Enslavement and poverty and suffering and violence and rape and plunder. This is what the majority of the world, including colonized peoples inside the US, which are African, indigenous, and Spanish-speaking indigenous people that exist here, because there are two Americas. There is a Del Mar divide, and it is colonialism. It is colonialism. It's a political and economic system in which a whole people occupy and dominate another people for profit. And that, this has been going on for colonized peoples for half a millennium. And that if there is no understanding of colonialism as the mode of production, you can't solve this problem. It will never be solved. And if you notice that, even to talk about, as the environmentalists do and the environmental scientists do, the white people, that this is a temperature rise since 1750, the onset of the Industrial Revolution. Well, what caused that? The enslavement of African people, the triangular trade. It didn't start all of a sudden. There were factories now. Why? They were formed because there was a world trade of seizing African human beings, of seizing land and committing genocide massively against the indigenous people and colonizing the entire planet, Vietnam, Philippines, India, all of it for the benefit of resources for white people. And this is what caused this same system that would wipe out 60 million indigenous people in 50 years, as happened in the Caribbean, has no problem wiping out the environment and the viability of the entire planet. It's like somebody said, or Lenin said, that the capitalists will sell you the rope to hang themselves with. They just keep feeding on it. They are never going to change it. And I think that it's really important. So when we talk about climate change, we have to start with colonialism and this understanding that there is no benign economic system that we live in that needs to be reformed, because it was born that way. And everything that we have is produced through colonialism, or the exploitation of somebody else, the stolen labor of African people, the stolen labor of Asian people on land stolen from the indigenous people. There's no other reality. This is what America is, and we have to get to that. And I think that it's really interesting to see that a lot of, I would say all, because I watch a lot of environmental videos to see, what's happening, et cetera, and never mention the state. That first of all, there's this thing, like if we all, protest and go out into the country and do gardening, but wait a minute, this land is stolen. This belongs to the indigenous people. It's not ours, to begin with, and it is theirs. And, they're always like, well, if we just switch to sustainable energy, then we can do this. Well, first of all, sustainable energy also is resources stolen from Africa in terms of solar panels, take cobalt and lithium and these batteries they're going to have, that they have now. That's lithium from Bolivia and other places, and Congo also. So it really is still based on a premise of colonialism, but also there's no understanding that the financial interests of this system are one and the same with the US military, that the US has the highest, the most expensive, the most extensive military on the entire planet by far. It has dropped the nuclear bomb. Who did that? US did that. You know, we're worried about the nuclear option. The US did that. And that the US wages war every day. I mean, an average of 46, 50 drone bombs are dropped by drones every single day in the, you know, by the United States to somewhere in the world. It's interest. Look at the wars. You know, that oil and natural gas are the most lucrative commodities on the planet, and they're owned by the US. And every war that the US wages in the Middle East is related to oil. Even Afghanistan, which I didn't even realize has a huge oil reserves, and they were going to have a pipeline through there. And this whole thing, even with what the US fomented against Russia through, you know, its CIA base of Ukraine, was about a pipeline. The US did not want that pipeline from Russia into Europe. So that's, you know, it's all connected. And, you know, you see this climate movement, and they send a young girl, you know, Greta, to speak before the imperialist ruling class and to beg them to do something about this climate change, to stop the fossil fuels. They own them. They own them. They kill for them. They're training their children to do the same thing. So, you know, it's not going to be done by trying to win the hearts of you know, the ruling class or the moneyed sector. The world has, this system has to go, and we have to come to terms with that. And so, you know, just to understand that the colonial state of the US government was built off slavery and genocide. And again, it is the largest military in the world. And that, you know, we see Iraq, the Middle East, Afghanistan, Russia, Venezuela, Mexico, you know, indigenous land here, and in the US and Canada, and stolen land of the indigenous people. So it's not going to change. And Chairman Omali Yeshitela developed the concept of colonialism as the mode of production, meaning that the driver of the entire world capitalist economy is colonialism. It delivers all goods, services, and a high standard of living to the colonizer, who is us, who is white people, coming at the expense of the poverty and suffering of the rest of humanity and the earth itself. And again, you know, the climate did not begin changing 50 years ago or 200 years ago. It began the day that Prince Henry of Portugal sent ships out from Portugal to invade Africa in 1415 to begin the assault on Africa, because Europe was poor, it was in feudalism, and that Europeans could see that Africans had gold, they had a good, great standard of living, they had ancient civilization. You know, they can see the, ultimately when they went to conquer the Americas, they came up against the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayas, and were just blown away by their culture and their civilization, but immediately began murdering them, slaughtering them, so that they could have the silver and the gold and everything, you know, that was there. And so this is what transformed Europe from impoverished feudalism to wealthy, to, you know, all of the resources are stolen from elsewhere. And, you know, I always remember the Aztecs statement about white people: they lusted after gold like hungry swine. And, you know, they would be like, what is this about? And so, you know, as chairman has shown, climate change began when white people stole, in a process, over 13,000 tons of gold from Africa by the year 1500. So in less than a century, stole 13,000 tons of gold from Africa, from West Africa. So you hear, if you've ever been to West Africa, to Ghana, the slave castles, they call them, are called La Mina. La Mina means the mine, because that's where the gold mines were that were shipping the gold out before African human beings became the gold that they were trafficking. So then, and in the same process, Europeans began massively and violently kidnapping African people with just unspeakable atrocities, with degradation, rape, mutilation, trafficking African human beings, turning human beings into the first commodities of colonial capitalism, pushing African people just, inland, away from the coast. This is where the Europeans were all ultimately surrounding the entire coast of Africa, just stealing African human beings and using them as currency, as commodities. And that this, not to mention the trauma that this inflicted upon African people that has continued up until today, but also introducing incredible plunder, just, rape. So many resources have been taken out of the ground of Africa for centuries, half a millennia, just that alone. Like what is that for the pollution that exists? And as the chairman has also noted, that the seizure of African human beings and forcing them onto ships to the Caribbean and to the US actually changed the habitat of sharks, as whole schools of sharks followed the slave ships to the Americas. And it was the enslavement of African people that created the first stock exchange. I want to be really clear. The stock market is built on the backs of African people. In New York and Wall Street, there is literally a African cemetery, a burial ground under Wall Street. And in fact, one part of it, one little edge of it was exposed, and when a building was torn down, and huge protests from African people in New York kept them from building over it, because there's actually 15,000 Africans buried there. So there's a little part that's been turned into a national historical monument. And I really, urge everybody, if you're in New York, if you're in Manhattan, to go there and see it. It just literally tells the story of the US and of this economy literally built on the broken bodies of African people. And they say that the majority of the people who whose bodies are there are children who were beaten, children who were harmed, and murdered in so many different ways. So just to say that the Dutch, as we know, who brought Africans to the US early on, 1619, at that time, Holland was the main trading country of African people in the world. And Holland was the first country to launch a stock market. And it did that in the year 1600. And you can know that every financial tool, if you know anything about stock marketing or trading, everything that they have now, they had then. Things called IPOs, which are stocks, equities, which are stocks, the bond market, retirement funds, securities, annuities, insurance to build cities. All of that they had. White people used that stock market as a kind of 401k, as an investment in their retirement. I mean, it's just like now. This is what started the life. And then after that, there was the city, what's called the City of London, which is literally on the docks of, that's the Wall Street of London. It's called the City of London. And it's on the piers, Canary Pier, it's called, if you've been there, and that's where the ships came in and brought Africans. And there's a great museum right there where the stock market is in London. And then Wall Street was where African people were sold. That was the original market. And there was a cafe called Tontine's Cafe right on the corner of Wall Street. And it's where the ships came in to harbor, unloading Africans into New York City. And yes, there was enslavement, huge enslavement in New York City. To the extent that when the Civil War broke out, the mayor of New York at that time wanted to secede with the South because they were so dependent on the cotton industry that was coming out of the South, and it had enslavement as well. So, we know that Christopher Columbus in 1492 was financed by Portugal and Spain, also huge kidnappers of African people, and that he went to the Caribbean and the Americas, and within 50 years, the majority of the indigenous people of the Caribbean were wiped out. And this was genocide before there was a word for genocide. There wasn't that word, when it was just a given that African and indigenous people would be killed, they would be massively murdered. And that there were so many indigenous people who were slaughtered by the white people, the white invaders, that by the year 1600, so 100 years after Columbus, white people created a mini ice age through the massive genocide of the indigenous people, basically by killing them. Their farmlands went back to forests, and forestation is one way of bringing the carbon dioxide back down to earth where it's supposed to be. So, this is how the system, this country, the world was built. This is what the chairman means, that colonialism is the mode of production. And that, they talk about mass extinction, but that was mass extinction for 50, within 50 years time, for 60 to 65 million people to be killed. I mean, that was mass extinction. And that, in 1545, less than 50 years after Columbus, the Spanish had wiped out so many indigenous people in the Americas, and they began mining for silver in Bolivia at a place called Potosi in Bolivia, what is now Bolivia, that is at 13,000 feet. So just think what it took to get there. They made indigenous people work in those mines, which was extremely toxic. They used mercury, arsenic, and other things. And, the indigenous people only lived a few weeks. They never came out. Once they went down in the mine, they were never allowed to come out. And it was noted that indigenous women killed their children rather than to subject them to this horrible, horrible life under colonialism. And that mine produced so much silver that Spain's currency crashed, just like, it flooded the market. And so, so climate change didn't just pop up in 1750 in the Industrial Revolution. It is one long trajectory, beginning when the first white man stepped foot in Africa and made an African man or woman do something against their will, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela says. And from Africa, this deadly white virus of violence, degradation, rape, pillage, and destruction spread across to the Americas, to Asia, to South Asia, the Middle East, the whole world. And, there's a phrase used by the US military during Vietnam that the military used when they were talking about killing the people of Vietnam who were fighting for their freedom and liberation and fighting against colonialism. And the phrase was, kill anything that moves. And that is the mentality, so to speak. That is the mindset of the colonizer. And, and another thing that was often said, exterminate them, exterminate them, exterminate all the brutes. That was the popular white sentiment in terms of the indigenous people in this country. And so all of us, all white people, sit on this pedestal of this colonial violence. Who perpetrated the lynchings, the attacks on Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood, Florida, and all the places where African people had attempted to get away from white people and accumulate their own wealth and their own well-being and create their own economy. So many of those towns were ransacked, were burned, people were killed, and white people took the resources, and including here, by the way, including here, where this city did so much. We've had studies on the book called The Broken Heart of America. And it's about St. Louis, and it's absolutely chilling. And something that we can talk about again and more. But what St. Louis has done to the African community is brutal. It's brutal in every way. Economically, they had a program, Let It Rot, in terms of keeping all resources out of the African communities. And that's why you see on the north side, just every other building is falling down, is condemned. And this is colonialism. It's horrible. And white people we are the colonizer. And we don't want to be, some of us don't want to be, that's why we're here. But we are. This is the structural relationship that we have, the relations of production, as the chairman says, the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. Who owns the means of production? White people do. No, not all of us have money or resources, and I don't think that many white people are happy or anything else. But our existence, our social wealth, our way of thinking, our expectations, and our ability to realize those expectations come at the expense of African and indigenous peoples here. And that is the reality of it. So all of us participated in the colonial violence, the lynching, and feasted on the blood of the oppressed, and still do. So that is the general trajectory of climate change. Climate change and colonialism are one and the same. Chairman Omali Yeshitela wrote, "The climate crisis being experienced and discussed by the frantic colonial academics and environmentalists today is a crisis that began with the intrusion of the white man, the colonizers, that created the colonial mode of production that is now pushing the lives of the colonizer, of white people, with greater intensities." So, I just want to wrap it up and say that the only answer is in the leadership of African workers organized to create a new world, not built on any form of exploitation or war or suffering or rape or getting something at the expense of somebody else, but based on genuine socialism, based on the resources shared for the needs of all the people, of being able to live as primary, as with the earth being guarded by the people, because that will never, never, never happen under this system. And even Einstein once said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. It has to be colonized people that solve this. It was fine before, they know now. That's why so many states are calling the indigenous people to help them with the fires and other things that they know how to deal with. And that the leadership of the new world, the leadership of the revolutionary struggle is colonized people, African people, the subjects of history, with their voice. And that the colonialism inside the US for African people is a fight for power. That's why we support the Black Power Blueprint. It is not a struggle against racism. They don't give a damn about that. They want power over their lives in order to be able to protect African people from the bad ideas of anybody that anybody would have in their head. But African people are going to be free, self-determining, have their own culture. And our job under their leadership is to to end our self-imposed isolation from the rest of the world. You know, we really want to call on everyone here and everybody to who's online to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, join the forward side of history. This is what's going to solve the problems. You know, just jump off that pedestal and let's be part of building a new world. And we have a lot of work to do among the white population, winning people, returning stolen resources, not as charity, but as genuine reparations. So with that, I'm going to end it, and we can talk some more, but just to say unity through reparations and Uhuru.
Uhuru. All right, Uhuru, another round of applause for Chairwoman Penny. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny, and let me just get to our program here. All right, well, I just really want to appreciate that presentation, and thank you for presenting that, and salute you and of course the leadership of Chairman Amalia Shatella, and just, you know, unite that. I think this discussion, you know, obviously the situation is very dire, and, you know, you laid out all of the facts and figures showing that, but it's very inspiring to know that there's actually a solution. There's something we can do under the leadership of the anti-colonial struggle of African and oppressed peoples. And, you know, we hear about this like climate despair where, you know, there's even, I think, entire like subcategories of therapy that you can go to now, like therapists who specialize in helping people through climate despair and like the mental health crisis amongst teenagers in this country is like skyrocketing, suicide rates and drug abuse and all that. And a lot of it has to do with, you know, you can't even see a future for the planet. And none of these ridiculous climate conferences and these climate scientists make you feel any better about it. I mean, it's almost a joke. Like when you have a whole social system built on destroying life, and then you have people at the top like trying to figure out, you know, if we adjust this a little bit and turn this down over here, like it's ridiculous. So this is the way forward, and there's not going to be a solution outside of the dismantling of this colonial system and the victory of African and indigenous people. And reparations means repair the damage.
That's right.
That is how the world is going to be healed, is through reparations, is through African people reclaiming control and indigenous people reclaiming control of the land and resources that rightfully belong to them in the first place. That's the only road to repair on this planet for all life. So I just really want to appreciate that. We will have discussion. We'll have time for people in the room and online to engage with Chairwoman Penny to ask questions. And we also encourage people to submit your questions in the Zoom Q&A feature or in the YouTube or Facebook chat. So before we go into our Q&A, we want to tell you how you can get involved in building solidarity with the struggle of African people for liberation, which, again, if you're a white person who's concerned about the environment and concerned about the state of the planet, this is the place to be. This is the place to actually take meaningful action towards social and global transformation. So we want to show some photos of what reparations and African self-determination looks like. So if you're in the room here, it's a little screen right there where you can see what we're going to be showing you. So we're going to go into some slides now, and I think they're showing. Okay, cool. So the Black Power Blueprint is economic development by and for the African working class, transforming the north side of St. Louis. And these are just some of the projects that have been completed or are underway. There's many different projects within this multifaceted anti-colonial development initiative of the African working class. So pictured on the left is the Uhuru House at 4101 West Florissant on the north side, featuring a Quabba Hall and offices. And through the sheer will and determination of the African working class under the leadership of Deputy Chair Onezene Shatella, what you're looking at here went from a condemned building in 2017 to a state-of-the-art community event and program space that opened in 2018. So not 5 years later, but literally, I think it was like 9 months that it went from being a condemned building to a beautiful, beautiful African cultural and political hub. And with an outpouring of support from volunteers and donors. And across the street, condemned buildings were demolished to make a garden and outdoor event space with a stage. And that is where the One Africa, One Nation Farmers Market was launched last year, thanks in part to a 3-year grant to end food apartheid by providing fresh, healthy food to the African community and building the capacity for community commerce among local Black farmers and vendors. And that farmers market is now in its 2nd season, and it's now weekly. We encourage people to check it out. It's amazing, amazing market. So the next slide will show you that the Black Power Blueprint also demolished another condemned building at 4368 College Ave and broke ground just a couple weeks ago, actually, April 11th, on the construction of a community basketball court to provide a safe space for recreation. And next door to that is where renovations have been completed on a 4-plex apartment building earmarked for housing for the African Independence Workforce Program. So this is housing for a program that's creating meaningful employment for African people re-entering their community from the colonial prison system. Next slide. So on the lot at 3771 West Florissant Ave, this is really, really incredible. The Black Power Blueprint is developing the Uhuru Wa Kulea African Women's Health Center and African Doula Project. Uhuru Wa Kulea means freedom to nurture. And this health center is an African-led wellness and education center, empowering African women and girls and caring for physical, mental, and emotional wellness. And this is all so significant because each of these projects alone is incredible, but together and as part of the struggle and strategy of African people for power and to negate the power of colonialism, this is explosive. And actually the party, the Uhuru movement, calls this the spring explosion because so many of these programs are blossoming in the spring as we speak. And last but not least, last slide here, the Uhuru Solidarity Center, where we have the honor to be right now, here on 2654 Gravois Ave on the south side, is also part of the Black Power Blueprint. As I mentioned earlier, this is the space where white people are organizing support in our own white communities for the Black Power Blueprint, holding events and studies like this one, and serving as a headquarters for Uhuru Planet Reparations apparel, which we're gonna talk to you about in a couple minutes here. And this is owned by Black Star Industries, and we are responsible for the rent and all other expenses of improving and maintaining this important organizing center, which is a great honor. And there are many more projects that are part of the Black Power Blueprint. You can learn about all of them at blackpowerblueprint.org. So we want to call on people to contribute to the work of USM and the center. And I think actually the link is not this link. It is
Solidarity.org/K-Reparations.
Okay, so we apologize for any confusion there. Go to uhurusolidarity.org/pay-reparations, or if you go to uhurusolidarity.org and click the big red button that says pay reparations, it takes you to the same place. And we encourage everyone to contribute whatever you can towards the goal. We have a goal to raise $500 tonight. And we want to go ahead and thank those who have already donated, including Lisa in Minneapolis, who is pledging $50 through Lisa. Jackson here in St. Louis, who donated $20 through to Jackson. Leah also joining us from Minneapolis, putting in $50 through Leah. And Jamie in Philadelphia, $20. That's awesome. Janice in St. Petersburg, who's doing $50 through Janice. So that means we've already raised $190.
And I'm going to put in $50.
All right, $50 from Chairwoman Penny Hess.
All right.
So that brings us to $240.
So we're almost halfway there.
Almost halfway. I will put in, let's see, $40. So that's, okay. Some good,
Mel.
quick math. All right, Mel is doing $25 through Mel in Gainesville. And it's adding up quick. Boom. All right.
I
Yes.
pledged $20 for the center.
$20 from Hallie. And yeah, anyone can contribute. Go to uhurusolidarity.org/pay-reparations, or again, go to uhurusolidarity.org and click the big red button that says pay reparations, and let's get to our goal of $500. So we have 175 left to go. And I just really, really want to salute and appreciate everybody that has contributed. And while you are continuing to go to uhurusolidarity.org/pay-reparations, I also want to draw your attention to the other button on that website that says become a member. And if you are not already a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, that is another important way that you can take action right now. And I strongly encourage you to become a member. And frankly, I think the question, once we hear this presentation, once we hear the state of the world today, that is the consequence of hundreds of years of oppression and exploitation, and we can see the incredible hope and promise represented in the struggle of the colonized African and working class peoples of the world. The question is, how could you not join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement? How could you not be compelled to join the only organization on the planet of white people working directly under the leadership of the African Revolution, fighting for reparations to African people as an anti-colonial practice? This is our future. This is in our interests, and it's the way forward for all of humanity. So we encourage everyone to go to uhurusolidarity.org/join. That link definitely works. Okay, so you can go to uhurusolidarity.org/join, become a member, become a sustainer, and let's see if we want to have anybody else to thank for your donations. Well, we have $175 left to go. Again, thank you to everybody who's contributed. Go on ahead to uhurusolidarity.org/pay-reparations and contribute towards making this Uhuru Solidarity Center everything it needs to be as an incredible reparations institution of the party. So, so while people are continuing to donate, we're going to head into Q&A with Chairwoman Penny Hess. And I just want to recognize where we have people tuning in from. So shout out to all the people participating from Gainesville, Florida, New Jersey, Battle Creek, Michigan, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Oakland, California, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Elahi, St. Louis, and Arizona. And we already have some comments and questions that have come in. If you have questions or comments, you can still put them into the comment section on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're on Zoom, the Q&A feature. And if you're in the room,
You can just say it.
Just raise your hand, stand up, or stay seated, and you can chime in. We'd love to hear from you. Any comments or questions you have, how you experienced the presentation. If you have any comments about it, just let us know. So the first comment is from Leah in Minneapolis, and let's see if we're both in the shot here. Okay, so the first question or comment said, I read somewhere that to fuel the green revolution and to produce quote unquote green energy, resource extraction from colonized peoples has to increase by 800%.
Oh, that's a really good statistic. And
Yes,
I totally, no doubt that's true. Wow,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. If you could put that in the chat, that article, I would
Please
really
do.
like to see that. That's
Definitely.
really good information, but I believe that because all of the resources, our coltan just to be on this computer and on our cell phones is coming from Congo at the expense of the murders of over 10 million Africans from Congo just in the last several years. And yeah, so I mean, all of these resources are coming from Africa, from South America, from Asia, and from the rest of the world.
That's right.
Uhuru.
The next comment is from Len in St. Louis, who you can also say in person if you'd like. And it says, do you want to read it?
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Hybrid event in action.
I said, wow, Chairwoman Penny, that was such a profound analysis of the current state of the world. The climate crisis is colonialism. Colonialism must go.
Uhuru.
Right on.
Totally agree.
Thank you, Len.
Did everybody hear that from
Oh
elsewhere?
yeah,
I don't know.
I'll read it for Zoom. So Len said, wow, that was such a profound analysis of the current state of the world. The climate crisis is colonialism. Colonialism must go. So thank you, Len. So we have a comment from Pharaoh on YouTube who said, wow, great presentation. Shout out to Comrade Penny Hess. That was raw and uncut and so very relevant.
That
Absolutely.
was thanks to Chairman Omali Yeshitela's African internationalism.
So let's see. Here's a question from Larry Holman. Wouldn't it be more economical to prevent and reverse further climate change by minimizing the release of greenhouse gases than it would be to adapt to and or to mitigate for continued climate change, the end result of which will be the extinction of all life on the planet Earth?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know that the kind of things that this system and technology is talking about doing is massive, a massive system of giant mirrors that would reflect the sun away from the earth, and then these machines that would bring the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is supposed to be in the soil. It's supposed to be in the soil, so it goes together with soil, depleted soil. But to bring it back down to earth, and it's like what? Like what? I mean, it's like almost ridiculous. It would take half of the world just with all these mirrors, and the other half would be these machines sucking. I don't know. It's insane, so I don't know if that's exactly what you were talking about, but I think that there's no answer in this system.
Yeah.
That if somebody is going to heal this, first of all, it has to stop fossil fuels.
Right.
And there's no way that this system is going to stop airplane travel and all cars.
Right.
And that's just not going to happen. And it has to be a different kind of society. I don't have the answer, and I don't know about what you're saying about minimizing the release of greenhouse gases. Then it would be, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I think that I think that the answer is in colonized people know
Right.
the answer.
Exactly.
That once in power, like the indigenous people used to say, that you had to make decisions that affected 7 generations in the future. This system is like 7 minutes in the future. Right. There's no sense of stewardship and custodians of the planet and of other people.
Right, exactly.
And look at, even Cuba with everything that the US is trying to do to it all the time, but it just had incredible solutions for its COVID and sent doctors all over the world to deal with it. And, it was just an amazingly different approach.
Right.
Then the US is about profit. Everything's about profit. Healthcare is about profit. School is about profit. Anything is. Church is about profit. I mean, it's just all about that. So.
Right. Definitely. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, the science, whatever the specific scientific solution is to reverse the effects of climate change, is going to come from colonized people, African and indigenous people. So I appreciate that answer.
Well, it's saying capitalism leads to oligarchy, which kills democracy. But the thing is that capitalism, what Chairman Omali Yeshitela is saying is that capitalism from the very beginning was born by white people going out and stealing other people's resources. So whatever oligarchy means, it's always been there.
Yeah.
And that this is, stealing something from somebody else is essential to what the system is. And yes, capitalism or the colonial mode of production has to be overturned. It has to go. There's no way that we can see any solutions to these problems,
right,
or an end to war, or an end to poverty. I mean, none of that is going to happen no matter what you're talking about under the system.
Uhuru. So we have a question and a comment. This comment looks great. I'm not sure who it's from, but I'll read it in a second. I'm sure that they'll let us know. Okay, Leah. All right. So first, are there Uhuru groups in Kansas City?
No, but we want there to
Yes.
be. We want
Let's
to
do
go
it.
there. That's in
Yes.
our region. We're the Midwest region here.
That's right.
So yeah, if you want to sponsor, you know, a member of, usually we travel and a member of the party, the African People's Socialist Party would speak, and a member of the Solidarity if there are white people there. So yeah, and we're not that far from you, so you're welcome to come here
That's right.
to St. Louis and see it. So
Contact
yeah,
us.
Definitely.
Email us
Give me your
info
email.
at uhurusolidarity.org or put your contact info in the chat. We'll definitely be in touch with you about organizing the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in Kansas City. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely want to go there.
So here's a comment from Leah. I don't have a question at this moment, but I wanted to say that when I joined USM, I considered myself an environmentalist and was very concerned with climate chaos. During my orientation, I asked what the stance of the party was on the climate crisis, and Ali, our membership chair nationally, responded that for the climate to be healed, colonized peoples need to have their resources returned and colonialism has to be destroyed. This was the first time I had ever heard this analysis. I now understand that I have to work under the party's leadership to end colonialism in order for our planet to remain livable. I have to go beyond being an environmentalist and struggle for an end to colonialism.
All right. Thank
Right
you.
on. Well put.
Always
That's right.
well spoken.
Definitely. So did we have any other comments or questions? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, just,
Oh.
wow, this was such a powerful presentation, and this is really one of my favorite topics in USM, because before, I've been a member about 5 years now, and before I joined, just like what Leah's saying, that was like my thing, like, you know, all the recycling you could do and actions with other groups, and it really, like, coming into this organization and just understanding that it's about colonialism and more than just my individual actions to, like, use a metal straw or recycle a can or ride a bike instead of a car. Like, it's so ridiculous to think that the pressure of, like, changing the world is, you know, the like kind of white left answer of, like, just recycle it, which is whatever, you know, but it's so much more than just changing your personal actions. And also, I read this book some years ago that put forward, like, half the greenhouse emissions in this country is from the military alone.
Oh,
So
yeah.
for that person that was talking about stopping emissions, like, well, first stop the US military, you know, it's even more than whole countries. Like, I'm just looking it up now.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, with their jets and fighter bombs and, you know, all of that is committing, every time a bomb drops, it, like, destroys the environment even further. So it's just, like, all tied together with, you know, if you care about the environment, support colonized peoples fighting for freedom, because when indigenous people had control of this land, there was no plastic oceans, there was no, like, oceans filled with plastic killing whales and all this crazy stuff. So anyway, I just really appreciate this presentation, and Uhuru, thank you.
Uhuru. Thank you, Hallie. Yes.
I have a comment on that and a question. I was gonna say, I believe that the entire campaign for, like, individual responsibility, the individual carbon footprint is, like,
Yeah.
started by Exxon.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, people might not have heard that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and then the question,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, so you think in order for colonialism to cease as a means of production, that speculation as a means of production also has to end, as in, like, Wall Street, the entire model?
Oh, absolutely.
How would you first, yeah, okay, so I feel like that's natural, but, like, how would you personally envision that happening?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think there will be revolutionary struggle. I mean, there will be a revolution. There have been in many other countries. It, you know, it has to, it's something that's not going to give up its power. But the thing that the chairman keeps telling us and explaining is that imperialism itself is so weakened. It doesn't, the US people around the world don't bow down to the US anymore. It can't do what it always did. And it has other places like China and Russia vying, with it. And they were never part of the colonial mode of production. They, were sort of getting there in spite of it. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be struggle, but I think that in so many, we live in a very violent society. It's got to end, and this, the violence of this system is not going to be, they're never going to hand that over.
Right.
It's got to be fought for, and people fought for it in Vietnam, and they fought for it in other places. And, that's the only way ultimately, and people will be free. But the thing that the African People's Socialist Party believes, the sort of thing that the more sweat in peace, the less blood in war. So, that like a revolution isn't a wild act or something like that. It's when a whole people, all African people, like in the 60s, come to the conclusion that this has to be overturned. I can't live in this situation, So it's the war of ideas at this time that we have to take on, because we can't accept this anymore. We can't accept this system. We can't accept the world the way it is. We can't leave it. I feel that very much, we have to take up and make this fight, or there won't be another generation. There has to be the right of African people to be free, and indigenous people living with a life expectancy of 40 years in this country, in the greatest poverty, that exists on these things called reservations, which are like concentration camps on their own land. And just, the world isn't accepting it. Look at 2020 with all of the rebellions and the fight against, just to, that hasn't ended. There's another George Floyd killed every single day. This is colonialism. So, I believe that we have to fight. And right now, we have to win white people to stand on the forward side of history, to, to pay the reparations, to, to forward, like the more power and economic and political power that the African working class has, it negates the colonial power. So it just like it's bigger and bigger and bigger, and they get littler and littler and littler, the colonial mode of production. And that's how it happens. It's not, yeah, that's how it happens. And that's why we have to do our work. And that's why we're here, in the white community. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that response, and also the question and the comment. Somebody was requesting that I repeat the comment because they couldn't hear you. So Jack was saying that the campaign calling for individuals to take individual responsibility for the carbon footprint and environmental impact was launched by Exxon, right? Okay, so that's very revealing.
Really some good facts and statistics we're getting here, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. And Chairwoman Penny, we have time for one more question, and then we're going to be wrapping up our event. So we have one more question from Larry saying, should the colonial governments of the world subordinate themselves to the governments of those peoples from whom the land and resources were stolen?
Well, governments are created by people. So the governments are not going to subordinate themselves. The people are going to win power, and set the terms for what it's going to be. And that's the only way. There can't be, colonialism and real socialism at the same time. That's something that the chairman is saying, because all the countries that attempted to do that were either boycotted and, embargoed and invaded,
right?
Even like the Sandinista, like Nicaragua was invaded by the Contras, which is US backed forces, and that sort of thing. So, yeah. So no, I don't think that's going to happen. But what I do think is happening, that the chairman has explained, is that the resistance of African and oppressed people around the world is forcing even governments and the moneyed sector and ruling class to make concessions. Like we just saw Harvard University is paying out $100 million in reparations because of its role in slavery. Like, well, okay, that's because of, you know, the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement for the last 40 years saying reparations, reparations, reparations. And we're seeing this where, you know, all throughout the Caribbean, I don't know if you've seen this, but the, you know, what is it, Prince William or whatever, have been going to different countries in the Caribbean that were British colonies, and there are huge demonstrations going on saying, no, you owe us reparations.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, so it creates a crisis, and governments in this sort of transition period are forced to make some concessions, and the ruling classes. So
Right.
yeah, we will see more of that, I'm sure.
Right on. All right. So fundraising update. Thank you to Wendy in Kansas City who
Yeah,
put in
right,
$25.
Uhuru.
Nathan in Corona, California, $25.
All right,
Thank you,
Nathan.
Nathan. Allie in Philly, $25. Uhuru, Allie, and Maureen in Oakland, but actually here in St. Louis. $25,
All
Maureen.
right.
Uhuru.
Uhuru, okay.
So,
Just about made our goal, it looks like.
yes, I think so. $55 left. All right, there we go. Somebody can go in and put in $55 at
Okay.
uhurusolidarity.org/pay-reparations, or go to uhurusolidarity.org and click the big red button that says pay reparations. So before we head into announcements, Chairwoman Penny, anything else you want to say? Kind of close out the discussion before I wrap it up.
Well, I do think that, you know, I'm so excited about the period that we live in, because I see the power of the organized African working class, and, you know, just the exuberance of it, and what life can be, you know, what it has to be. That is the side that I want to be on, you know. And I just, you know, this African internationalism, the leadership, Chairman Omali Shatella and the African People's Socialist Party gives me a lot of hope for the future and confidence that, you know, there will be a better future. It has to be taken on. So I would just say join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. I want to really salute our new member as well, Rachel, who's here.
Yes.
Who joined us on Saturday, and just say Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, Chairwoman Penny Hess. And I want to join in welcoming our new member, Rachel, and also encourage people to be like Rachel and join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. If you have not already, go to uhurusolidarity.org/join. Whether you're in the room, whether you're online, become a member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. If you are in the room, I especially want to encourage you to join and get involved and volunteer with us. We actually have a lot going on even this Saturday. We're going to be getting out posters. We're going to be tabling. We're going to be making calls. We're going to be painting this Solidarity Center. We got a lot going on. We want you on board. So stick around after a little bit, and we can talk to you more about upcoming volunteer opportunities. And we're just really excited to build this movement here in St. Louis. So Uhuru. All right, so here's some announcements. Help spread the message of what we learned about on this webinar tonight. Get the beautiful new Uhuru Planet t-shirt. Let me make sure this is actually visible. Okay, there we go. Colonialism caused climate change. Pretty unambiguous message right there. Yeah. Reparations now. So this is a really important, oh, and there you go. There's the Uhuru Planet Reparations apparel logo on the back. So these shirts are available here in the center and also on uhuruplanet.com/shop. So go to uhuruplanet.com/shop and get your Colonialism Caused Climate Change Reparations Now t-shirt today. So I already bought
$25.
$25, well spent. So, okay, so that's announcement number one. Secondly is to join the Omali Taught Me Sunday study. Chairwoman Penny mentioned this earlier. This is absolutely invaluable every single Sunday to receive 2 hours of political education straight from the leader and founder of this movement, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. It's just incredible every single week. And this Sunday, there's actually going to be a new time. The studies have been at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific, right? Okay. But now they're going to be at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 7 Pacific, starting this upcoming Sunday, May 1st, which will be on how the African People's Socialist Party and the chairman have taken on colonialism inside the US over its 50+ year history. So definitely want to tune into that on youtube.com/Uhuru TV and facebook.com/Omali Yeshitela. So Chairman Omali Yeshitela's Facebook page and youtube.com/Uhuru TV. You can check those links out for the chairman's study this Sunday. And Thursday, next Thursday, May 5th, is Give St. Louis Day, which is an annual day of giving to nonprofits. And we know that the African People's Education and Defense Fund and Black Power Blueprint are unlike anything else out there in that they represent the African working class and political and economic power and self-determination. So we're using Give St. Louis Day as an opportunity to build support for the Uhuru Wakulea Women's Health Center, one of the Black Power Blueprint projects that we showed you earlier. And we're having a webinar next Thursday. You're all invited to come out in person as well. If you're here in St. Louis, it's going to be it's not at 8 p.m., is it? 7 Central. Okay, 7 Central that day. You can register at tinyurl.com/GiveSTLDayDoula. Okay, we have a new link. All right.
Okay.
So we'll get that link for you. Can you text it to me? All right, we're gonna get you that link in just a second. And also you can donate now through May 5th. We wanna fund this health center. $290,000 is what's left needed to make this health center a reality. We have a funding campaign going on right now at givestlday.org/Black Power Blueprint. So you can check out that website, set a fundraising goal, call on your friends and family to contribute. It's a really powerful campaign to build reparations for this important project. And I'm really excited about this. On May 21st, from 2 to 4 p.m., we have the grand opening of this Uhuru Solidarity Center right here at 2654 Gravois Ave in St. Louis. We will be live streaming it for those who can't make it in person or who are tuning in from around the US and beyond on these same channels. So stay tuned for more info. That's going to be an incredible, historic, revolutionary, and festive event, and just, a milestone. So, and last but not least, African Liberation Day, Relentless, 50 years of leadership towards African redemption, May 28th and 29th in cities throughout the US and around the world. For more info, visit alduhuru.org. And just to circle back to the other, tinyurl.com. Here's the Give STL Day webinar registration, tinyurl.com/GiveSTLDay Health Center. So we'll put that in the chat for you as well. And that's next Thursday, May 5th. And Deputy Chair Onezene Yeshitela and Zanlile and Pico, who are playing leading roles. Deputy Chair is leading, and Zanlile plays a leading role in the doula project and the African Women's Health Center, will be speaking. So you don't want to miss that. That's going to be really, really powerful. And for details about these and more upcoming events at the Burning Spear, you can go to theburningspear.com/events. Make sure to visit uhurusolidarity.org to learn more about the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, how you can become a member and join the work to build white solidarity with Black power and unity through reparations. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny Hess.
All right.
And
Thank
to everyone.
you and everyone. This has been fantastic.
Uhuru.
Unity through